Pooja, you want to call in the next member?
Yeah, Guru Sarvanan is waiting to ask his question. He has something to ask about local governments. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. I am Guru Sarvanan from Rajapalayam, working as a chairperson for a development organization called Institute of Grassroots Governance. In recent times, you spoke about the importance of decentralization, which is going to be a crucial factor for the development of Tamil Nadu. Since we work with elected village panchayat presidents, and there are a lot of grassroots level challenges has been there. So I would like to ask a couple of questions based on our observations from the field. The previous ADMK government has not released the rural local government grants on time, as well as there is no transparency mechanism which shows that how much fund has been allocated to a particular village panchayat. If you see in Kerala government, they add a separate appendix, which indicates so and so fund has been allocated to panchayat in their budget. So I just want to ask, can we expect these sort of like initiatives which promote transparency? And I want to ask in general, like what sort of the plans that present government have to strengthen local government finance? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are all good questions. Of course, there's an old joke. I think it was a famous Indian economist, I forget his name now, who said everybody wants decentralization only up till their level. So when you sit in the union, you say, I decentralize to the union, then in the states, you say state. But I have been very clear, and we have implemented this in practice. Even in our corona counter strategy, we evolved and decentralized, and that's how we were able to bring Madurai from a peak of 1,500 around May 14th to about 250 cases yesterday. That quickly. Most other districts have not had that kind of a turn. But let me answer that 2-3 ways. I say I am an open admirer of the fact that Kerala is decentralized a lot more than most states. I'm on record from 1.5 years ago saying one of the reasons they did so well in the corona containment on the first wave is because they empowered local bodies to do things. Without going into politics, I'd say the lack of release of funds or the lack of transparency is the least of the sins of the last regime. They didn't run any local body elections at all for 4 years for the bulk of Tamil Nadu. And for my constituency, for example, they have not run it, period. So for 5 years, I served as the equivalent of 22 corporation ward councillors plus 1 MLA. On the bright side, I learned a lot about the problems of basic life that ought to have been managed by the corporation, about drinking water and general use water and sewage and garbage and street lights and roads and things like that. But those are local body subjects under normal circumstances. That's not an MLA's day job. That is a councillor's day. So not having elections is the height of it. So, I shouldn't go much further than that. I can't criticize you more than saying you didn't even run the election. In our case, we have a lot of plans because local self-governance was always one of the principles of the Dravidian movement going back to the Justice Party. I would say we should have probably done more in the bigger picture, the strategic. As I say, Kerala has done more than us, maybe because of a series of communist governments. Maybe that philosophy is even more distributed than the Dravidian philosophy. But I can assure you that we will strengthen in multiple ways. I don't want to talk too much because the governor's address is due in about a week. And then, there'll be the reply to the governor's address, and I will present a budget, and there'll be a debate, and there'll be a reply. But I can assure you that by the time we're done with the reply to the budget, there will be a series of steps announced, both in terms of greater devolution, plus greater monitoring, plus greater transparency. I'll add one more thing. The 6th Finance Commission of the state of Tamil Nadu, the State Finance Commission, much like the Indian 15th Finance Commission, its term was scheduled to end in the near, like June 30th, for implementation starting fiscal year 22-23. Because of COVID and because of other things, they have not finished, so they've asked for an extension. And it has been a godsend to me because I took all the comments that I had given to the 15th Finance Commission on behalf of the DMK when they came about incentivization, about indexation, about not trying to predict things you cannot. When I said we in the state, when I look at the history of the state, we are not able to do the 2-year forward projection in the required FRBM, FRA, medium-term fiscal plan with any accuracy. Those numbers look like nonsense. When you look at the 2 years ago projected budget of this year and the actual budget of this year, they're like random numbers. If one state cannot predict its own future or project its own future 2 years forward, how are you, the Union Finance Commission, looking at 31 states at the center, projecting their revenues and their outcomes 2 years forward for 5 years, so 7 years forward from when they start the projection calculation. And based on that, you allocate in a firm formula things that, of course, your projections are never ever going to come true. You have 1 in a million chance of getting them right, or less. You can win the lottery with greater likelihood than that. So it should be flexible. It should be incentive driven. It should be based on interim performance measures, etc. So I had the luxury of having that conversation with Mohan Pyare, the retired IAS officer who's chairing the State Finance Commission. And I encouraged him that what we have preached to the center, let us implement some of those things in the devolution. Because as you know, the State Finance Commission talks of devolution from the state to the local bodies. So I said, let's bring in those principles into our Finance Commission report, which we will gladly try to implement. And let us show the country how it ought to be done. Because the 15th Finance Commission certainly didn't go nearly as far as we had asked. So I think, step by step, the first will be over the next 2 months, 3 months. And then when the 6th Tamil Nadu State Finance Commission report comes out, you'll see we are really innovating a lot on devolution to the local bodies.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Can we go to Viswak next? Viswak, are you here? Sorry, Pooja, I'm just cutting the order. Viswak, are you here?
Yeah, okay. So my question is also about states' rights. So given the context currently where, the center is constantly trying to encroach on states' rights, I think Mamata Banerjee recently proposed a political union of states of sorts so that there can be some sort of collective bargaining. I wanted to ask whether you consider this a realistic prospect. And I don't mean in terms of, the desirability of such an arrangement, but actual, the pragmatic feasibility of something, an arrangement like that.
Again, I have a breadth of experience in history, so I'm short depth. So I would say that in my understanding, there used to be something called the Council of the States, where the states used to meet and interact with each other. Somebody can maybe chime in who's better informed than me when I finish. And I think it's high time it was revived. I think certainly state-to-state discussions, and I think state-to-center discussions, if you look at my note on the GST, I pointed out that one of the problems with the GST Council is it is the only semi-formalized avenue for state-to-center discussions or union discussions on finances, right? Really, there ought to be a whole lot of other avenues. There's not enough. The GST Council is not the place to talk about borrowing limits. Nobody in the Constitution invents that the GST Council, which didn't exist at that time, should have those kinds of powers. So I think there's a huge lack of communication avenues and therefore communication state to state. And I'm not talking about politically. I'm saying, to me, states' rights are states' rights, irrespective of whether the party in the union and the party in the state are the same or not. We are starting to see that. I'm starting to see in the GST Council that members of states who are run, which have governments of the same political inclination, the same party as the union, are actually starting to talk a bit out of line, saying, actually, for my state, this would be better. I'm told that they were very much kind of willing to sacrifice their states' rights for the political good earlier. Maybe it's hearsay, so I'm not accusing anybody. But even now, there's a clear distinction. And I'm not just talking about DMK or TMC or Congress. I'm saying all those states that do not have a kind of single party BJP or BJP dominated coalition government talk a lot louder about states' rights. But the rest of them are not mute. They are starting to talk more their citizens' benefits rather than kowtowing mindlessly to the union's rights. And so I think sooner or later, this notion of a council of states or a conference of states or a discussion of states is inevitable. I can say in the short time, in the kind of less than 4 weeks or maybe 5 weeks that I've been in my seat, I've certainly built linkages with the finance ministers of several other states. to the point where I'd say the finance ministers of Kerala, Punjab, Chhattisgarh, Andhra, Telangana, we have all talked about getting together or visiting each other or having ongoing discussions about, the future of taxation, of states' rights, whatever. Some of them I knew personally, but many of them I did not. But I think it's not just required, it's not just practical, it's not just feasible, it's going to happen. The only question is what form and how quickly. But these things are going to happen.
Pooja?
So do you plan to mobilize all the finance ministers so that collectively you can ask for a better, bargain from the union government?
Yeah, I remember Vijay actually also sent the same question.
Yeah, I mean, who am I? I came to this job 6 weeks ago. Who am I to mobilize anybody? Either my leader will mobilize based on his vision, or other people will take the initiative. I'm happy to participate. And some of this is just human nature in the sense that other than a few kind of really unfathomable brains across the political spectrum, we are here to do the right thing for the people. And I include the Honorable Union Finance Minister in this group, that most of the time we talk about what's good for the people, and we understand that we may have political kind of compulsions to go one way or the other, but we talk in good faith. In fact, let me go the other way. Let me say something very, very clearly. In the GST Council meeting yesterday, single agenda GST Council that I thought at worst would take 2 hours, no more, and I arranged my day accordingly. And then it ran on and I couldn't stay for more than 3.5 hours. I had people waiting in my office for an hour and a half. In that council, things started to take a little bit of a turn for a bad situation. And the Honorable Union Finance Minister, multiple times, twice, stepped in to say, listen, in this forum, we assume everybody speaks with good faith. We assume that everybody is talking what is good for their people and what is good for their state. And therefore, there should be no personal castigation. There should be no insinuation of intent or politics or whatever. You just maintain that decorum. That's the way we operate. And that's exactly how most civilized people go into a discussion, right? This little kerfuffle I had with the minister of another state was because that minister went and ran off some press conferences and did some other things. Otherwise, the meeting finished after 9 hours at 8:30 at night. Suddenly, I didn't call the press. I went home and met my family and had dinner and got on with my work. The next day, I heard about it. I didn't react. Only the Friday meeting, my evening press conference appeared in the Monday morning papers as statements in multiple national papers all the way to Tamil Nadu. Then I reacted. Because otherwise, it's a fool's game to take this outside, right? We are not playing a single part game. This is not like one time you win and you're done. We are here for the long run. We are here for a marathon kind of series of meetings and decisions and follow-ups. It is in our interest to get along. Of course, we'll have differences. Unanimous is not a prerequisite for consensus. We are not expecting groupthink, and we are not willing to go groupthink. I used the word self-respect in the meeting yesterday. I said, I cannot agree with this because I have self-respect. I come from a movement that values self-respect. I appreciate their work. I'm sure they did it in good faith. But with my self-respect, I cannot acquiesce to this. So I register my dissent. Now you may still vote over me and call it consensus. I have no problem. I'm not going to go out and make any press conference about this, right? I'm not going to grandstand about this. We still got, we'll have to come back for the next issue and the next issue and the next issue. So we are reasonable people. We are not looking to take, political fights. This is a job with a lot of responsibility. I am certainly not the firebrand or the lightning rod that is going to bring everything together. I do my job. First time I'm doing this job. I'm learning it. I'm doing it. The leader will tell us which way to go. The chief minister will tell us which way to go. Or people who have been doing this a long time, like the Honorable Chief Minister of West Bengal, who's been doing it for decades, and has been a union minister and has been state chief minister multiple times. Or other people will tell us. And if my chief minister says, go and attend, I go and attend. Or he says, host, I'll host. I may even host. But it'll be because my chief minister says so, not because I say so.
Peter, I know there's lots of member questions, but I have to ask you this very quickly. For many years, I've been hearing about this revival of Council of State. Mr. Thomas Isaac from Kerala, he in fact did do rounds of these finance minister meetings. There have been some sort of cooperation between states. But why is there no real push? Is it because, for example, Jagan Mohan Reddy wouldn't want to speak against the union government at points of time? KCR is red today, black tomorrow. We don't know what mood he is in. So are there too many political obstacles really for states to come together and really plan something out like?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're all in active politics. We all expect to stand for elections. We all have to worry about, if we have skeletons in our closet, and usually the behavior tells you the extent of skeletons, right? So I'm not naive, but I'm saying, our state's motto is "Why Maye Vellum," truth alone triumphs. Sooner or later, if black is black, then black is black. How many ever ways you try and call it white, it doesn't become white. It is still black. So it is not a workable model. You can see, you concentrate all the power in the world into one place at the union government at one pinpoint or two human beings. Then you will find that you fail at execution. Then you'll find the economy fails. Then you'll find that you cannot control the crisis of the pandemic. Then you have to start to kind of unwind the trade. The problem, even in the markets, right? I spent kind of 20 years of my life in the global markets. What Keynes said, the markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. You see a short, you see this thing is overvalued, you short it, and you'll find it keeps on rising for another 5 years. You can't keep making the margin calls, you get broke, and then it will crash. When it crashes, it will crash to the right price. It will go from 200 to 5 or 8 or 7. But by that time, you'd be broke. So on the one hand, I agree with you, the perception of political power, and in fact, I'll blame the media for this, if you don't mind. The media projects the kind of power that the ruling dispensation in Delhi simply does not have. I'm not blaming you personally, I'm saying the media overall. I'm saying the last time that the BJP won an election outright in a massive way was the UP election of 2017 post-demonetization, when they won 300 out of 400 seats. Every other time, it either squeaked through or by post or marginally, or Bihar, 0.12%, or, Form 20 is not released for 2 months after the election, with kind of a lot of surreptitious movement on the EC, right? Or Karnataka, where they bought after, they collapsed the government. So I'm saying this notion that somehow this invincibility is existing in one or two men who are like, godlike in their power is just a fallacy. It's a charade. And the media perpetuates and kind of aids that charade. And sooner or later it'll break. Again, I'm saying bigger people than this have fallen, right? Empires have fallen. Markets have crashed. So it will break. It will break, and it will break calamitously. The question is, what is the timing? When I had some conversations with some other colleagues of mine in the government, I said, when I was in the markets, I realized I can see what's coming, but I'm probably like 2 years too far ahead of my time. So I started cutting my risk bets like that as a trader. Yes, I know this is overvalued. Yes, I know it's undervalued, but the market's probably going to take longer to get there than I think it is. And therefore, I might lose a lot of money in the middle, and I try to control myself. So the same way I'm saying, I think the tide has started to turn. I think, in my opinion, the kind of recent election results and the narrative in the global media, if not the Indian media, starts to seem like the tide has started to turn, and more the truth and the inevitable outcome. Devolution is inevitable. If you centralize anymore, you will have even worse disasters than the ones you have on your hand now, economically and pandemically. So sooner or later, the system will break. Now we'll see how long that takes.
Pitya, before we move to the next question, I have a political question for you. The other day, I was watching one of your interviews in which you were saying that perhaps the Prime Minister's communication is not correct because the speech which he makes comes in Hindi. This is, in fact, your comment was before the current speech by the Prime Minister. I was watching the speech this time, and this time too, there was no translation. And what struck me is that they have enough bandwidth to actually translate this into all languages much before, make sure that every regional Doordarshan runs it. So I'm starting to think that this is a deliberate strategy, that they do not want to communicate beyond this, that they want to only communicate in Hindi perhaps. What is your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, who am I to attribute motives to others, right? Only the outcome is visible to us. So first of all, I want to clarify, I had no intention of becoming a meme or disrespecting anybody. I asked a simple question. If it is a language you don't understand, how many human beings sit in front of a television and watch anything for 20 minutes, even a movie that you cannot understand the language? If there's no subtitles and you cannot understand the language, it is a natural reaction that you don't, sit there for 20 minutes. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful become a meme that I seem to have become when I see all these photos. But I do what human beings naturally do. So then the question arises, can they not do it? Your answer is, of course they can. Then the question arises, why do they not do it if they can? And it could be that it is intentional. But in my own view, if you ask me to make a guess, just as a trader, I rarely duck a question. You have to make a price, so you have to say where the bid and offer is. My own view is not that they deliberately do it. My own view is that the government is that dysfunctional. It is not that they cannot. It is not that they haven't heard the feedback. But at some level, among the problems and the issues they face, they don't see this as important enough to do. That would be my bet. And I gave the example in the other case where
because the BJP's main thing is about communication, right? I mean, they came to power.
Yeah, which is shocking. So which is shocking. Which is what I'm telling you, that when it comes to elections, they seem to go all out. But even there, I tell you, in the 2016 election, and to some extent in the 2021 election, but the 19 election, the entire advertisement campaign of the BJP in the 2019 parliamentary election, run online in Tamil Nadu, was all in Hindi. And I made the point, I'll make it again. Running Hindi advertisements in Tamil Nadu is worse than running no advertisement at all. Because not only will people not understand, but it will be clear to people that you don't even care enough to convert the message to something they can understand, and therefore how little you care for them. So I think, in my own opinion, I don't think it is, nobody wants to hurt themselves, right? No, even the strong man doesn't want to necessarily look weak. Now, it could be an ego issue that having brought it up, they don't want to admit they're wrong. That would be my second choice. My first choice is, the system is overwhelmed, right? They're in the middle of a pandemic. The economy is in the doldrums. They don't seem to be making any headway. They collate all the power. They cannot get any outcome. The global media at least has turned. The state elections are starting to turn. The local media seems to be kind of on the verges of finding its backbone. And then all of a sudden, is this the most important thing that they can do? Probably not. That's why they probably haven't done it.
So two of the things I noticed here, PTR is being kind, one. Second is that he's saying the local media is sort of finding its backbone. And third, for those who didn't understand the meme that he's talking about, is an interview. He said, I don't listen to the Prime Minister's speech. I don't have time. So that became...
No, I didn't say I don't have time. I said I have many things to do. Why would I sit for 20 minutes in front of a TV I can't understand? That's all I said. Will you do that? Will you sit for 20 minutes in front of a TV you can't understand?
I have a colleague called Sayukta who actually translates it live for me. So I just keep looking at that Google Doc.
I don't have that luxury. That's why I don't sit in front of the TV.